Is there a Putin wing to the Republican Party? Well, Mark Levin thinks so. And why is Mitt Romney accusing Tulsi Gabbard of treason? Better yet, why are Republicans sounding so much like Democrats when it comes to Ukraine? Well, we're going to answer that question and more in today's video. We're going to see how a number of Republicans are channeling their inner wokeness. We're going to see what's really behind it. And stick with me to the very end of this video when I'll reveal why we can be sure that this latest trend among woke Republicans has absolutely no future. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. I'm your daily fake news antidote. So come on into your Patriot Professor's Den where I help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and insane and turbulent times. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And before we begin, make sure to click on that link below and support this channel by visiting our awesome merch store that has all kinds of t-shirts and swag for you and the Patriots in your life. So I've got my Let's Go Brandon t-shirt on. You can get yours as well. We got some brand new Freedom Trucker shirts. We got our Rhino Hunting shirts. You name it, all just by clicking on the link below. And again, I have to reiterate this. The most common feedback that we get from those of you who purchase these shirts is how often random people come up and give you these super awesome compliments whenever you wear the shirts in public. Your purchases, of course, are going to be spreading Patriot hope as well as supporting this channel. So make sure to click on that link below or go to store.turleytalks.com. That is store.turleytalks.com. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. As I noted in my video introduction here, we are most certainly living in crazy and turbulent and confusing times, and the crisis in Ukraine has only served to pour gasoline on the fire of that tumultuousness. And as a result, given that, I think most of us are unsurprised by the amount of unhinged, reckless rhetoric that we hear coming out of the mouths of both politicians and pundits alike. But what is taking many of us by surprise, what is very disillusioning for many of us, is that much of that rhetorical absurdity is coming from Republicans, the very politicians that we vote into office to protect us from the insanity of the woke left. What we're finding in all of this, what's so disillusioning, is that the very politicians that we vote in as a protective buffer from the absurdities of the woke left are now spouting off talking points that are literally unidentifiable and indistinguishable from that very woke left from which we otherwise depend on them for protection. Now, of course, there are some we would expect this from. Take, for example, the latest from the feckless neocon Mitt Romney. He's now accusing Tulsi Gabbard of treason. And her crime? Tulsi Gabbard is, quote, parroting Russian propaganda regarding the existence of U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. You know, the very biolabs that Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland appeared to be talking about in her Senate testimony with Marco Rubio just last week. Or take Adam Kinzinger, the soon-to-be ex-Republican representative from Michigan, accusing Tucker Carlson of, quote, echoing Putin's lies. Or take so-called Republican strategist Ana Navarro, who joined the borderline illiterates on The View to say this.
Yeah. And I think DOJ, in the same way that it is setting up a task force to investigate oligarchs, should look into people who are Russian propagandists and shilling for Putin. That's being, if you are a foreign asset to a dictator, it should be investigated.
I mean, you just heard that with your own ears. That is a so-called Republican calling on the Department of Justice to investigate people for expressing their political opinions. That's exactly what she just said. You heard that. Now, this is all to be expected from the repulsive likes of neocons, but what's really disillusioning is when we hear comparable rhetoric coming from otherwise trusted commentators and conservatives who are coming across as every bit as unhinged, reckless, and frankly deranged as anything we would hear coming out of MSNBC and CNN. Here's Mark Levin actually echoing Never Trumper and MSNBC talking points regarding a Putin wing of the Republican Party.
1994 to help protect their sovereignty if they give up their nukes. There are no nukes there. There's been a phony story about American biotech centers there to develop weapons and so forth. And, of course, the Putin wing of the Republican Party and the Putin wing of the media and the Putin wing of the Democrat Party, they're all over it. No, those are old Soviet locations that the United States has located and has been trying to deal with. We're not developing biochemical weapons in the Ukraine. What is it about these so-called American firsters in the end who are really American lasters, if you think about it?
Unfortunately, this isn't the first time Levin has done this. It's actually becoming a bit of a refrain from him. Take a look at this.
We have a Putin wing in the Republican Party. We have a Putin wing in the media. We have a Putin core in the Democrat Party and in academia. And you'll hear them and you'll see them, and they talk about how the United States may escalate war against Putin. Now, it's they, Lavrov and other lapdogs of Putin, who have talked about nuclear war. It is Putin himself who's talked about nuclear war. We're not. And they rarely ever criticize Putin, or they do it in a passing way in order to say something about the United States and how stupid we are and how stupid our generals are and so forth. Now, there may be that. I mean, Biden is the so-called commander-in-chief.
But of course, Levin is not alone. Every single night, Sean Hannity is calling for the United States and NATO to escalate their military involvement in Ukraine in a manner that's completely unidentifiable from Democrat talking points. Lindsey Graham is on his show several times a week, even openly calling for the assassination of Putin. And Hannity's featured a Fox News reporter admittedly reading off Pentagon talking points to debunk the so-called biolab story. So, to put it bluntly, what the hell is going on here? Have the Republicans lost their minds? Why do they think channeling their inner Nancy Pelosi is going to help them in any way? Well, at one level, what we're seeing here, I would argue, is nothing less than the revenge of the neocon. Nothing seems to awaken neocon sentiments like Vladimir Putin, and it appears that the Ukraine crisis has done precisely that. Neocons, as it turns out, are still very much a part of the Republican Washington establishment, and their reawakening is being echoed by otherwise trustworthy conservative media pundits who don't themselves appear to have any other option in their frames of reference when confronted with Russian aggression other than neocon talking points. But if that's the case, if we're seeing the rise of pro-war neocons, and neo-libs for that matter, coming back with a vengeance, doesn't that invite renewed scrutiny for the disaster that they wrought upon this world with their failed Iraq war campaign? And the answer to that is no, not if you can silence dissent. And this is where something called resentment politics comes in. I think it's helpful in understanding what's happening here with what's going on with what I'm going to call the woke wing of the GOP. I think it's helpful if we understand all this as an extension of what scholars call resentment politics. Now, that's an important term to remember because I think it's going to help you make sense of things here. Resentment politics is a technique employed by the permanent political class to shield themselves from any legitimate resentment that naturally arises among the population due to the permanent political class's incompetence. And what they do is they deflect that resentment away from themselves by channeling it and projecting it onto someone or something else. So the key to resentment politics is that the neocons and the neolibs and our political class scapegoat a segment of our population to shield themselves from any blame or culpability. You, not bumbling Biden or Bush or Lindsey Graham or Romney or neocon policies. No, you are the problem. You're the cause of all this misfortune that currently plagues our nation and our world. Again, the key here is that resentment politics is a technique that the permanent political class employs to escape any and all culpability in whatever crisis is at hand. It's never their fault. It's always somebody else's. And the key to successfully pulling this off is that the object of resentment is never allowed to legitimately dissent. In other words, the permanent political class is absolutely in the right. This is an unconditional surrender to the position of the neocons and the neolibs. They are absolutely right. There is no basis whatsoever for resentment against them. And the only way that they can pull that off is to silence any and all dissent against them. And they always pull that off according to a twofold pattern. It's textbook. First, you disparage the dissenting opinion by disparaging the person. You don't ever engage with the opinion or the argument. You always vilify and impugn the person making the argument. Tulsi Gabbard is a traitor. Tucker Carlson is a foreign asset. And if you're as vile as the likes of Ana Navarro, then you, of course, capitalize the ass of assets in your tweets. Heaven forbid you actually engage with their arguments with critical thinking. You actually treat dissenting opinions with the same respect and dignity that you're treating the propaganda that's being spewed out 24/7 from the mainstream media. Suddenly, the mainstream media for neocons is the most reliable mediator of information on the planet. Again, that itself would be a form of dissent, and that means you become a target of resentment if you engage with their arguments, and you don't want to be that. So that's the first thing. Dissenting opinion is stifled by disparaging and maligning and impugning the person holding the dissenting view, all the while the view itself is dismissed. And then, when that doesn't work, when that person refuses to comply, then the woke warrior always turns to threats. The person holding the dissenting view should be forcibly silenced, canceled, if you will. And that's exactly what Ana Navarro is arguing. That's exactly what big tech cancel culture is all about. If the person holding a dissenting view will not self-censor, then that person will be censored. This is the pattern that you're going to see over and over and over again from our woke wars on both the left and the right of the permanent political class. Again, the key common factor to all this is the way the permanent political class shields itself from any blame or culpability in the crisis at hand. They whip up mass resentment against someone or something else other than themselves, and that resentment is fomented by an artificially manufactured consensus which is self-fabricated by ruling out the possibility of any and all legitimate dissent. Make no mistake, when Mark Levin and Sean Hannity come across as rhetorically indistinguishable from Nancy Pelosi or CNN, it's ultimately because they're trying to protect the very neocon policies that have inordinately contributed to this horrific geopolitical disaster in Ukraine. I've covered the number of ways in which Western political powers pursued policies that have turned out to be utterly disastrous in Europe, most particularly the eastward expansion of NATO, and I'll defer you to those videos. But suffice it to say here, I think we're witnessing the very same resentment politics playing out, but now on the right. It's the same politics that we saw on the left with the whole BLM frenzy that destroyed so many of our cities. I think the good news in all of this is that this is exactly what we saw happen with the second Iraq War. It too had significant public support, and if you were a Republican, any dissent from that war was considered treasonous. Just ask Ron Paul. Treasonous, at least to your party. Today, that war lives in infamy. The Bushes and the Cheneys are nothing less than political poison. Ask any Republican who stands a chance of making it past the primaries. They would run from their endorsements. Let's hope that a comparable sanity returns among the woke wing of the GOP, and we can all get back to focusing on the issues here at home that matter most to us who live here. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on leftists like Bill Maher and Trevor Noah turning on Joe Biden. They're both openly admitting that Putin would never have done any of this if Trump were still president. You're not going to want to miss that. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.